SilmFilm script discussion, season 2, episode 9, part 2. We have figured out who our protagonist is going to be, unless it all falls apart. Before we get into that, if you are watching live and you check up at the top of the, or if you're watching later on YouTube and you look into the description, you see it's one down there for Midfoot 4, which is taking place on June 1st through the 4th. Exciting conference. I plan on being there. Marie plans on being there. A bunch of people plan on being there, including Dr. Herman Fleeter and Michael Drought, who are both Tolkien scholars. Not to mention Professor Corey Olson, the spirit behind all this madness. Check it out. Anyway, Feanor's protagonist.
I'm comfortable with that, as long as we show something in his workshop. If we're not going to show his workshop, I don't think we can do it.
Okay.
So that's my thoughts.
Right. All right. What we work out here. I mean, if we come up with something awesome, it may, and don't.
We're going to have to defend that decision. And that's what I'm warning you of right now, is that if we make Feanor the protagonist and we put scenes in that workshop, we're going to have to defend those choices.
Right.
But I think we can, because for one thing, I think I know enough about Tolkien magic and the history of science to come up with something that blurs the line.
Right.
Like, I think we can come up with something that looks elvish. Neither scientific nor magical, just elvish. I think we can do that. But I'm being optimistic.
Yeah. Feanor is totally coming up with cold fusion.
But cold fusion in an elvish workshop. So, it'll look esoteric. Yeah. Esoteric fusion. That's a thing.
Yeah, totally. All right. So, all right. Let's see if we can't work. So the climax. Let's figure out what our climax is going to be, and then. So our climax, to me, has got to be his presentation of the Silmarils. What else could there be?
That is the climax. So it's everyone's reaction to what Feanor's been doing over the whole episode. And it's a fairly positive reaction. Everyone tells him how wonderful he is.
Can we show... Okay, there's discussion of having Nerdinel and Feanor being run into conflict towards Melkor.
Mm-hmm.
Can we use that as conflict a little bit, and Melkor is starting to convince Nerdinel that Feanor is starting to go off the deep end, and drive that maybe?
We have to be a little careful how we go about doing that. The general idea was that Melkor wanted to be a little bit nosy about what Feanor is doing with the Silmarils, and he wants in on it. He wants to be involved in this. So he starts talking to Nerdinel and trying to give her ideas on things Feanor can do. And Feanor doesn't want to hear about it. Wants nothing to do with him, so it's a solo project. From that point of view, it looks like Melkor is like a person who's on the outside of a group and really wants to be part of the group and tries really, really hard to make everybody like them, but everyone kind of just ignores that person anyway. Which I'm sure everyone has seen that happen in high school and in other situations. So you usually feel badly for the person who's left out. Like, you're like, oh man, they're just trying too hard to be in with this group that's too cliquey for them. We don't really want to go that route too far. The other thing that is easy to do with someone who is an obsessive craftsman is to have him spending all his time in his workshop and neglecting his family and not spending any time with his wife, and having the wife be like, hello, we have a bunch of kids here. I thought you were supposed to be involved in this. Why am I doing this by myself? So marital conflict over him disappearing and working all the time seems an easy go-to, with the caveat that she's a craftsman too. She understands that about him. And she comes from, like, they come from a culture of craftsmen where that's kind of, like, every house probably has a workshop, you know? It's like, it's totally normal. And he might be doing it more so, but I feel like that, why am I being the neglected wife? Why do I have to raise the kids all by myself? Like, that just doesn't sound like Nordnell's voice.
Right, okay.
So it's a little bit tricky to see which angle to go with.
I'm not saying that she's going to feel like she's neglected. Feel that Feanor is neglecting himself. Like, I'm saying that he disappears into his workshop for like a year.
He, like, forgets to eat meals and doesn't take care of himself and all that kind of stuff that you usually would do if you're totally involved in a project. And his workspace gets more and more cluttered over the course of the year, and everything's disorganized and a mess. And yeah. So when she goes to visit him in his workshop, she's like, "What the heck are you doing here? This is a disaster." And he's like, "Don't touch anything."
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. So I mean, we can
and
certainly have that happen.
Because I would be interested. Because also, can you imagine if he comes out with the sun, just everybody's minds are blown, but Nerdinel sees that there's something that he's kind of wasted away in a way.
Yeah, that this cost him something major.
Right. So while everybody else is just falling at his feet,
she's worried.
She's concerned, and that's going to be a driving factor in the ship, essentially.
Yeah, because from this point on, she's going to have more and more to be concerned about. So, which means she's going to have more and more cause to argue with him.
Right.
So if we can show her genuine concern for him in this scene, we're not going to question later whether or not she actually loved him or whatever. I'm not saying that we would be setting her up for that, but a character who is always arguing with your protagonist negatively, and the viewers don't like them because it's like, shut up, jerk.
Right.
So if we share about as he begins this downward spiral, that will be important. So I do like that. What does Melkor think when he sees the Silmarils?
Say again?
What does Melkor think when he sees the Silmarils? And what can we show him thinking?
Yeah.
Because those are two different things.
My mind is like, he's got to be like, oh yeah, I need those. Right here, those need to be. How can we show that in a way immediately telegraph that? How do we show it in a way that if somebody goes back and see, and they'll say, "Oh wow, yeah," but they don't necessarily this time.
It's tough. We're not going to see his true opinion on the Silmarils until either the Feanor shutting the door to space scene that we talked about yesterday, or even when he actually steals them with Ungoliant. Like, we don't necessarily know Melkor's real thoughts till then. So they just have to have a hint of it here, and I think we can have everyone else is just like, wow, like there's an awe and wonder and very positive reaction on everyone else's face. His initial reaction might be the same, surprise, like, oh my goodness, he actually did it. And then he gets quiet, or he gets pensive. Like his initial, oh wow, that's awesome, should kind of blend in with everyone else's. But his secondary response should be more drawing in, like, and that's not mine, and I want it to be mine. But we can't see that because he's hiding it. So it's just
throw out a red herring on this.
How's that?
Is have him. Well, I'm about to explain. What we could do is have him look served it. Later, we'll realize that it's because because this isn't his.
Mm-hmm.
But if Nell catches her eye, because what she's seeing in front of her
Mm-hmm.
face is things that Melkor was saying to her before,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a glance, it's going to look like he's sharing her concern.
Okay,
Or
I'm fine with that. Yes, because then it's ambiguous.
Right.
Exactly. It's as long as we leave it ambiguous and it's potentially interpretable that way. But yeah, going back, it'll be like, oh yeah, he was just into it for himself. And I think that would be his false concern earlier to her would kind of be in character, because he'd be saying things like, oh, Fëanor can't do this by himself. Like, that would take too much out of him. He really could use some help. You know, someone who has the ability, someone who has the strength, someone who knows more than him, you know, like me. So that would be a very Melkor. It would be a Melkor way to show concern, to be like, I don't know this. Oh, yeah, which reminds me. So you remember that scene that I wanted with Melkor standing over Muriel's body and Lorien?
Yeah.
That would have to happen in this episode if it's going to happen, because it hasn't happened yet.
Well, which gives us, if we open,
it might be a good.
If we, excuse me, sorry. If we open up the episode with that, because episode opening like that, it was Finwë, and the person who came to him there was, I think that's how we set that up.
Yeah, it was Finwë and Nienna. Right before the whole Indus thing happened.
Right, and if Fëanor is there, and he turns around, and Melkor is standing back there, it's going to mirror that. I would love for that to mirror that exact same image. And
okay.
Action, it should be kind of understandable from the point of view of, where does he demigod you? Like, you know.
Don't sneak up on me like that.
People that big should not be able to sneak up on other people.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I don't know about you, but if a person who is significantly larger than me happens to sneak up, I'm very, very nervous. I don't like it.
I know. I would do this to my students all the time because they're sitting down. So I'm not a very large person, but standing up, I'm taller than them sitting down, right? Like, that's the whole point. So if I'm walking around, if I was walking around the classroom, I have make clicking sounds, you know, like their heels or whatever, so that it's not like I was silently walking around the classroom, but I would just walk up behind a student and then stand there until they noticed me. So when they looked up and I was right there, they always jumped out of their skin. It was great.
Yes, that is an excellent sensation.
Well, I mean, I was obviously doing this for a reason. So if they were doing something they weren't supposed to be doing, standing over their shoulder was my way of trying to get them to get back on track without calling lots of attention to them. But then when they jumped out of their seat, it kind of called attention to them, and you know, we all went on.
Yes. Speaking of demigods, my wife and I recently, a couple of days ago, and I'll tell you, have you seen anything of like trailers for this thing at all?
For which one?
It's the new Disney movie that just came out. Yeah.
I saw a trailer or something. People said it was good.
It was actually pretty decent, but there's a demigod in the movie who was played by Dwayne Johnson. Right. And like, I'm watching him sing his theme song, and I'm like, oh my God, this man has to play Tokus now. Oh my God, I can totally see Tokus singing this song. And my wife, who knows about this particular attachment to it, was like pinching me, like pointing, which is awesome. So anyway, we can get that moment at the beginning of the episode, and it will set up. It'll set up this between the two of them. Karita says that she's not going to be as tonight.
Okay, sorry, Karita.
We miss you. Anyway, birthday.
Oh yeah, happy birthday too.
Anyway, so put up the episode with that, which establishes this little miniature conflict early. So as we get into Act 1, what do we need to see? Being used.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff all has to happen in Act 1, so we need to combine these things into the same event that just does multiple things. So yeah, we need to see the Palantirian use. We need to see the Galadriel's hair scene, because we need to set up for the Silmarils pretty soon. We need to see Melkor talking with the Noldor and hanging out with them, so that we understand that he's just free to walk about Tyrion, and that's normal for him.
Do we want to have the intention for the scene where Melkor delivers his pronouncement to Fingolfin, that he would make a great leader, that he sees him?
I think we should save that for the next episode.
Yeah, you think?
Because at this point, we're just doing generic unrest of the Noldor.
Okay.
They are making swords in this episode too, by the way.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah. So I mean, like, there's just all this stuff going on in this episode. So the specific Feanor Fingolfin conflict, we should mostly save, with having it just very understated, with clearly they don't get along, just like we saw last episode. So it's going to be like an ongoing theme that Feanor and Fingolfin don't get along, and the next episode is where that escalates.
Okay.
So I think Melkor pushing that is going to happen next episode. But this episode, he can push the, oh yeah, lands in Middle Earth, and there's a lot of them, and you could go explore, and it would be great, and make swords for those dangerous creatures over there that I'm going to unleash on you in another season or two.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the irony of it, is that Melkor is making the Noldor into, in a sense. Like, he thinks he's
making them the fighting force, but he's making the fighting force that is going to the next few thousand years.
Yeah. Now, granted, they're not going to defeat him, and it's going to take the ones he's not working with to do that. So he wins this, I guess. But still, it is kind of ironic that he's encouraging his enemies to make weapons.
Yes. Well, if the first sword turns out to be ring, which I actually really like this idea of Fingolfin's sword being the first sword. It has some issues. Kind of discuss this a little bit of the first sword being the best sword. It's a little weird, I guess. But the idea that as a result of Melkor's sowing of distrust, the deliciousness of that irony, it's really hard to pass that up. It's very tempting.
I certainly hear you on that, because that's going to be the only weapon that the elves have that's going to leave a mark on Melkor, ever. Right? Because everything else is going to be stuff the Valar have. Or, like Thorindir's claws and stuff. So it's not going to be any other elf who's going to be able to. It's when Angrist snaps and the blade hits his cheek and cuts it, that's Beren. So even though and the knife was made by a dwarf. So yeah, so this is the only elvish weapon that's going to cut Morgoth.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we think about that? We're about to go to a break.
Okay.
This live. We'll be back in a minute or two. If you're watching this on YouTube in the future, you can share the videos if you like, want to share them. And if you haven't yet, feel free to subscribe. Check out the links below, including information on Myth Move 4, which once again will be taking place next through the 4th. It'll be exciting. We'll see you in a minute.